This is the 23rd episode of the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod. I am your host, Gary, and this is my podcast where I talk about my world of G.I. Joe, the news that has interested me, new things that I may have gotten, and also I close out every episode taking a look at a vehicle from the G.I. Joe toy line that caught my attention as I've cleaned up my mess, my basement, my displays, my pit. This is a quick episode. I'm recording this very shortly, at least by my terms, after my last episode. I'm getting ready to go on vacation, so I wanted to make sure I'm trying to get back on track with the podcast schedule. And the big news that I saw was 3D Joe's Carson Mataxis has launched Operation Recall. Operation Recall is his lifelong passion from when he was 9 years old, creating a new G.I. Joe figure, and he has put the band back together. And by the band back together, we're talking about G.I. Joe legends like Kirk Bazigin, Larry Hama, Ron Rudat, Ed Morrill, Bill Merklin, and Doug Hart to bring more figures inspired by G.I. Joe, by the G.I. Joe O-Ring line. What's cool about this is he's looking to create new action figure concepts from the community. You go on to 3D Joe's or search for Operation Recall, and he's been plugging it on social media, so I hope you've seen it. It looks like a really worthwhile project, and with this group of talent together for essentially what he's calling one last time, it is going to be whatever comes out of this, from whatever concepts are gathered and submitted to them. These guys are going to take, I'm not an artist, and if they pick a suggestion of mine, let's just say, hypothetically, I'm sure it'll come out a lot better than the chicken scratch that I would put on a piece of notepad. It's an absolutely worthwhile project for him and for whoever wants to get in on it. I'm going to get in on it. I'm going to try at least. Kudos to him. He's made friends with these creators, and they're willing to give it a go. So I think this is a project from the community, for the community, that's absolutely worth looking into. He has some, legal boilerplate at the bottom about, when you submit your design, it's going to become the Operation Recall's design, and you're releasing the design as from your IP, and you're making it their IP. So, and I understand why he needs to do that, and I get it, and that isn't going to deter me from trying to put something together. I got a couple of ideas. One idea is very crisp in my mind, and the other idea I'm still working out in my head. So I'm gonna have a lot of free time coming up, and I'm gonna get something sketched out and then try to get it over in the near future. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to find it, it's 3D Joe's Operation Recall. I'll put the link in the description below, so you'll be able to click on that and then go to this. And if you haven't seen this anywhere else, this way you can check it out for yourself. I think it's pretty cool. Next up, in What Did I Get New this week? Well, it is Wednesday, and Wednesday, as I record this, is always called New Comic Book Day. And for comic book collectors everywhere, that is a holiday that comes once a week. What's special about this week is G.I. Joe issue 291, High Stakes Part 1. And cover A is another Freddie Williams wraparound cover, and it's in his style, and it is, I'm sure by the time it's going over, it's going to be really cool, another really cool connecting cover. But cover B is the image of a train, and this is I'm very partial right now to IDW's cover Bs because they reflect more of what's going on in the story, and we have a train in there is a smokestack, so that's a steam train. It doesn't look like a diesel, and it's being chased or pursued by a Tomahawk that is opening fire. It's by C.L.A.W. And then finally, there's a retailer incentive cover by Jamie Sullivan with Firefly sabotaging something. And I have that too. It's currently not with me to take a little review of that cover, but the 30 seconds that I did look at it before I read this comic and then came down here to record, it is really cool. It's very reminiscent of the Devil's Due cover, whereas if you take the Devil's Due cover and, let's say, split it in half, where Firefly is on the bottom, then you know what's going on above Firefly. Crouching down, leaving a restricted area, as fireworks go off above him. It's a really cool piece. I was really excited that my comic book shop had it on its wall, so I was really happy to get it. I haven't gotten a retailer incentive cover at the comic shop in several months. Now, in a nutshell, without getting too spoilery on this book, this is setting up the story with what's going on with Dawn Moreno having Snake Eyes' memories implanted inside her. And the comic book spends the pages flipping back and forth Snake Eyes' memories and what Dawn Moreno is doing on that train. So on the train, and if you want to skip ahead, because I'm going to go into a little bit of spoilers, because the first 5 pages, the flashback was the preview submitted from IDW, so you can read the first 5 pages, but the rest of this book, so skip ahead to the toy review at the end. I'll try to think about putting a timestamp below, but it's probably going to talk about this a good 10-15 minutes. And so Dawn Moreno on the train with Scarlet, Throwdown, Stalker, and Mongoose are on the train fighting terrorists. The terrorists on the train aren't Cobra, and they're being in the support vehicle is the Tomahawk above them with Lift Ticket, Roadblock, and Wild Bill. We start the story in the middle of the action, and there's a lot of exposition on pages 6 and 7, really with everybody telling what's happening, and it's really for the reader. It doesn't really make sense in a story-wise to have this much exposition. I thought it was a little heavy-handed without having any clues around, but I also know that sometimes you're rushing for getting that story across. So we're not seeing the insertion of the team from the Tomahawk onto the train. So we're getting caught in the middle of that action. It is done very well. It's C.L.A.W. I mentioned last episode that I was really excited to see him back, and his pencils are just as crisp as they've ever been. Inking them this time is Maria Keene, who has a slightly different style than Brian Shearer, but it still complements S.L.A.'s pencils very well. And S.L.A.W. works really well with Larry Hama with the storyboarding and the general draftsmanship, so everything follows logically. It's a really well put together. We do have a B plot with Dr. Mindbender and Laura 343 on Cobra Island with the Cobra Casino and the brainwave scanner, because we haven't seen the brainwave scanner in a few months, so it's a good thing that it's back. I wouldn't know what I'd be doing with an issue of G.I. Joe Real American Hero without the brainwave scanner, but it's good because it's only one page. And the issue, for the most part, other than that little interlude with Dr. Mindbender and Laura 343, is spent between the action on the train and flashbacks. And the flashbacks used are stuff that we've seen from early in the Marvel/IDW run, with Snake Eyes getting hit at the LZ, Snake Eyes getting his face blown off in the helicopter in the desert when they were going to rescue George Strawhacker. And the action is actually off the charts on this. The action for when they are on the train is done really well. I can't say it's like a return to form. It's definitely a good issue of G.I. Joe. I like it a lot more than issue number 290. I wouldn't say it's like one of the best issues I've ever read of G.I. Joe, but it is an above average issue. I will maintain S.L. Gallant draws the best version of Scarlet. She never looks better, and it's just a good fit. And finally, the one thing, if I was going to nitpick the book, is they talk about Sean Collins, a.k.a. Throwdown, a.k.a. Snake Eyes version 2, and they call him Sean all the time on the train. I'm wondering if that was Hama's choice, storytelling-wise, to make sure that we understood that we are talking about Sean Collins, even though 85 issues ago, he was Throwdown. That was his proper code name. And they've moved away from that. That is, like I said, that's picking some nits there. But overall, I enjoyed it. There's a lot of action. It's well put together. And at the end, I'm not going to spoil the complete end, but the ending was satisfying and closing out this first chapter and moving us on to part 2. Because obviously what they're trying to do as they close out towards issue 300 is to have another 10-issue story arc. And I hope that this first chapter is indicative of the kind of action, adventure that G.I. Joe brings, and this is going to be something that's going to tie it all together, and it's going to be more personal because we're going to be dealing with characters here that Hama has been writing about for a very long time. I hope it is a little more grander scale than what he's done in the past, and I say that only because I remember Devil's Due going out with an absolute bang with World War III, that 12-part. If you like G.I. Joe comic books, you might want to think about picking up issue number 291, especially as it's closing out the 300-issue run with IDW for the end of the year. I'm actually really surprised that we have now 9 issues left for the year before December 31st that they have to publish, and we are currently sitting on 8 more months to do it. So they're starting to play catch up, and I really wish the best. I hope they get everything done that they need to get done with that. So aside from the pollen really affecting my nose this week, I did manage to get down in the basement and check in on my mouse situation, and yes, a Cobra rat did move in from storage as I'm getting ready to close that out finally in the coming weeks. I just gave my notice, so I'll be out of storage by the end of May. And I did move a Cobra rat in here, but I'm not going to talk about the Cobra rat because I really didn't prepare too much for this being so quick. I wanted to also talk about a much larger Cobra vehicle that has a driver, but I wanted to move that's going to be in two episodes from now, and I can't wait to talk about that one. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk about one that I'm actually kind of intimate with, and I did have to move a couple of them, and I've restored, I'd say 6 or 7 of these, and that's the Cobra Claw from 1984. Now, the Cobra Claw, Claw is an acronym, and C.L.A.W. stands for Covert Light Aerial Weapon. And on the box art, it shows it being piloted by a Cobra Trooper, or a Cobra Viper pilot. We can't tell because there's no officer sigil on the helmet, and we don't know if the chest of him is silver or red. And the cool thing that I like about the Cobra Claw is that it is very 13 years into the future for G.I. Joe. It's not because it's a rocket pack, it's also because it's a drone. And one of the great things about the Cobra Claw is it's one of those little vehicles that introduces that fantastic element to G.I. Joe. But the physics work, and I love it when the physics work. With one simple bomb that plugs onto a backpack peg located on the underbelly of the Claw, you make this a drone. You take the bomb off. It's a backpack for your Cobra or other action figure to fly or rain havoc. It's such a small vehicle with a lot of features. Starting off with, you have a removable machine gun panel on the top. The blueprint calls it a machine gun access shroud. It's a friction fit. It's not a snap fit. Every single one that I've had fits wonderfully on it. It goes over the machine gun, which is a piece of gray plastic that's also, for lack of a better term, friction fit. That is sometimes broken. It sometimes can be fragile. That comes off, and that is a neat little feature. You have extendable wingtips that go in and out on each side. You have flaps that go up and down in the back, and then you have a front elevator that also rotates, which would be about the height of a head of your action figure. On the bottom side, not counting the bomb, that you have retractable landing gear on each wing, where while the action figure holds on to the handlebars, which is also the front landing gear, and at the tips of each wing are 2 missiles, and the blueprint calls them the unguided 10-pound HE-8 Venom missiles. So 10 pounds is not much. And for comparison, the flash fire bomb that goes onto the backpack peg is a 750-pound. So enough to do some damage, I guess. This toy is very easy to take apart and fix. It is mostly friction fit between the 2 halves of the body with 5 pegs, and they come across easy. Parts for this are out there. Some parts are harder to find than others, but overall, getting one of these complete in a good shape isn't a bank killer. You can expect a mint one, super white with a box and blueprints will run you about, today's pricing, about $60-ish. But if you don't mind not having the paperwork and you don't mind not having the box, you don't need it to be pristine white like me. I mean, I don't mind having a pristine white, but if you have one with, creative yellowing, you can get these for, $20 to $30 if you just know if you look around and score a deal. The one other thing about this, a hidden feature, is if you have a terror drone, 6 of these will fit on the doors around the base. And because of that, I have 6 of these because they will be displayed with my terror drone, and I just have to do it. The terror drone also makes a great base of operations. So if you're playing with this as a drone, you have the computer centers on the top of the drone. That could be the Televiper or Techno Viper playing with it. Another way to use it as a drone capability. Who would pilot this? I mean, literally any Cobra foot soldier, 86 Viper, maybe not so much of the newer Vipers, but all of the classic characters. 83 Cobra Commander would work wonderfully with this. Storm Shadow, Firefly, Major Blood, I mean, the Crimson Twins, just about every character fits on this. It's so versatile. It has so many uses. It is, to compare it to something else that Cobra has, it is like an aerial ferret. How do you not have one of these with your with these guys? And you can even make it even more fun. Your guy can be wearing this as a backpack while driving the ferret. So, hey, instead of having a parachute, he can launch off the ferret after it gets blown up. To rate the Cobra Claw on a scale of 1 to 5 extendable wingtips, this is a solid 5 extendable wingtip toy. It is an absolute must for any collection. There's a lot of play value in it. There's a lot of display value in it. It was ubiquitous in the cartoon, in the first couple seasons of the cartoon. It was featured in issue number 21, when Storm Shadow arrives to the Silent Castle for the first time. So it has some significant places in G.I. Joe lore and in G.I. Joe media. and it's a lot. There's a lot going on with it. So if you don't have a claw, I think you should look into having one, because it is such a classic Cobra infantry flying vehicle. And this concludes this episode of the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod, the strange but not estranged nerdy little brother of the PikeOComics.com pyramid scheme. Broadcasting family. You can find us on Anchor.fm, our hosts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Good Pods, and other fine podcatching platforms. While you're there, leave a review, subscribe, like, rate, however you want to interact. It only helps this podcast grow and get better. You can find the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod on Twitter and Instagram at Chaplain Joe Pod. On Facebook, just search for the Chaplain's Assistance Motor Pod. And if you don't believe in social media, you'd rather just do an old-fashioned email, chaplainjoepod@gmail.com. And before I leave, just one final missile for the masses. Be decent to each other. See ya.